Not many people hoped that this day would come, but Adrian Newey has decided to depart Red Bull F1 in the near future. It goes without saying that he's had the biggest influence on the team compared to everyone else, but all good things must come to an end. And it seems like Newey has outgrown the team and the sport in general. But what Horner had to say about this huge blow from the best engineer in the world will truly shock Red Bull fans, as it seems like not everything was as purple as it seemed in the Austrian team. Adrian Newey was a key figure in Red Bull's success during the aerodynamic era, as well as when Verstappen successfully challenged and defeated Hamilton in 2021. The controversial ending remains as a black mark on Verstappen's career, and we are certain that even Red Bull's fans hoped that the championship wouldn't have to end that way. But that's all in the past, and Verstappen has shown that in 2022 he's a legitimate champion thanks to the engineering masterpiece that was put in his hands. Not to take away from the Dutchman's talent, but if it hadn't been for Newey and his amazing understanding of the sport, we doubt that Red Bull would have conquered the grid with such ease last season. It's quite obvious. Just look at what happened with the rest of the teams. All of them were struggling with different kinds of issues. Reliability, porpoising, all kinds of stuff. But not Red Bull. Adrian Newey was present in the sport when the ground effect was first introduced, more precisely in the 1970s, and then banned for safety reasons in the 1980s. He said that he doesn't really understand how other teams didn't anticipate the issue, and the fact that he knew it all along can be proven by the design of the floor at Red Bull. They had the most complex floor compared to the rest of the grid, and that is something that they're looking to build for the upcoming season. However, the presence of Newey is going to be a limited resource for Red Bull, with the Brit shifting his time to other projects rather than focusing full-time on the Austrian team's F1 ambitions. Amid Newey's announcement that he's stepping down from the day-to-day operations with Red Bull, Horner believes that the team is now at its peak and it won't miss Newey that much. Newey was appointed as a chief technical officer at Red Bull back in 2006, and prior to this, he had the same role at McLaren. But the 64-year-old has finally felt that the time for other projects has come, and he has now focused on other sports, such as sailing America's Cup with Sir Ben Ainslie, the four-time Olympic gold medalist. Even with this in mind, Horner still thinks that Red Bull has nothing to lose in the future, and that Newey's departure from the team won't hurt the Austrian squad as much as everyone else believes. Over the last few years, Adrian has stepped back from day-to-day responsibilities in Formula 1, and he splits his time between Red Bull Advanced Technology and Formula 1. He has an encyclopedic knowledge, and what we've seen during the last couple of years, which has been fantastic, is the technical team has really stepped up under Pierre Walsh's leadership with Enrico Balbo, Ben Waterhouse and Craig Skinner. However, many have started to ask questions that simply make sense. For example, what is the commitment of Newey to Red Bull at this point? Obviously, a large portion of Newey's knowledge comes from this team, and it would be silly for him to just turn his back on the Austrian team and go dive into other championships or other teams. Rumors have gone to the extent of experts relating Newey to other teams, such as Aston Martin, as we all know that he's definitely the type of engineer to accept challenges, and what other team could present a bigger challenge than Aston Martin at this point of his career? But Horner has cleared up all of the rumors, and while he believes that a technical backup that Newey has created beneath him like a spiderweb is more than supportive for Red Bull, he also said that the team is using Newey's services but with reduced time. Talking about the current involvement of Newey with Red Bull and the technical team that works beneath the 64-year-old, Horner said, "I believe it's the strongest technical team we've had, and that's enabled Adrian to go off and do the Valkyrie project and now the RB17. Of course, Adrian is still there to be drawn on, but not on a day-to-day basis. Maybe 50% of his time is focused on Formula 1. He is in the office probably a couple of days a week on average. When his attention is needed, he is there to be drawn on by the technical group." However, Red Bull has not been in greater need of Newey at any other time than now, as the budget cap breach has caused the team to work with a reduced amount of time in the aerodynamic facilities, such as the wind tunnels and the CFD. Obviously, if there is one engineer that can make it all work with the time that they have to spend in these facilities, that is Newey. And now that the rest of the grid has caught up with the technical regulations, Red Bull will have a tremendous challenge ahead of them to stay ahead of the pack. That is why Newey has been intensely passing on his craft to other people. like Pierre Wash, and it's evident that he is ready for a new challenge in his life. After all, you don't get to win 193 GPs with your designs if you're a bad engineer, something that Newey can brag about in his rich F1 career. People seem to forget that Newey is the driving force behind McLaren's recent success with Mika Häkkinen and Sebastian Vettel, and despite his long involvement in the sport, these are likely the highlights of his career as an engineer. One thing that Red Bull would definitely miss is the ingenuity of Adrian Newey, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they would have to give it 100%, as Horner said. It won't be the same as having him as the leader of all operations, but at this point, one can't help but wonder what comes next in Newey's life. As it stands now, Newey is focused on the hypercar project. As Horner stated, he was involved in the Valkyrie project with Aston Martin and is now actively working on the RB17. And according to Red Bull's boss, the fact that Newey forced them to step up their game and prove that they are worthy of being considered Newey's successors. Horner has been asked about Newey and his influence on Red Bull's legacy, and it's safe to say that the team's principal won't forget Newey as easily as we think. After all, they've been collaborating since 2006, which is why Horner had to add. He lives in the Matrix. He's been the conductor of the technical orchestra for all these years now. He's still very hands-on, he's still at his drawing board. I think it's probably the only drawing board in Formula 1. I had to argue with Ron Dennis to wrestle it out of McLaren. Obviously, highs and lows during these years, but it's always been fun. It's always been about racing. However, Newey's departure from day-to-day activities in Red Bull F1 doesn't mean that he will depart from Red Bull Advanced Technology, which is a separate company that focuses on a variety of other projects, including the hypercars. This is a long-time passion for Newey, and now it seems like he's finally ready to chase what he has been chasing for so long, with Red Bull F1 having to satisfy with guys that have had the privilege of learning directly from Newey's mastermind. The fact that Newey has been an influential force for many other technical directors and engineers stands as it is, with Dan Fallows explaining the relationship that he had with Adrian. Dan Fallows served as the head of aerodynamics at the Red Bull team before departing to accept the role of technical director at Aston Martin, and when talking about the relationship with Newey, he added, "I've learned a lot from Adrian. We all know how talented he is as a designer, but what people who haven't worked with him don't appreciate is just how modest he is from a technical perspective. There is no technical arrogance with him." Furthermore, Dan said that Newey doesn't have a problem with letting go of an idea if evidence comes along that supports a different approach, which is pivotal for you to be accepted as one of the greatest engineers in the sport. With that said, Horner is disappointed to see Newey not be fully involved in Red Bull's daily projects, but the team has some solid names who can fill in for the 64-year-old mastermind. What do you think about Horner's statement on Newey? Let us know in the comments below.